Hello, a very good afternoon. This is Sky News live in Darlington on the final day of the campaigning in the EU referendum. A last push from the PM. David Cameron promises a bigger, better Britain if voters decide to stay in
I think we're
Europe.
switched on.
Go out and vote Remain for a bigger, better Britain inside a reformed European Union. Stronger, safer, better off. A day to go. Let's do it.
But Boris Johnson urges voters to break away from what he says is a failing and dysfunctional EU.
People understand that this is a historic moment for our country. It's now or never. We can take back control of a huge number of things that really matter to our country.
Also this evening, celebrations around the world in honour of the murdered MP Jo Cox on what would have been her 42nd birthday.
We try to remember not how cruelly she has been taken from us, but how unbelievably lucky we were to have her in our lives for so long.
Cliff Richard speaks out after being cleared of allegations of historical sex abuse. And Rory McIlroy pulls out of the Rio Olympics over Zika virus fears.
Very good afternoon. This is Sky News live from a very sunny Darlington on the last day of the EU referendum campaign. Both sides of the debate have been travelling right around the country in a final frenzy of activity to try to sway those all-important undecided voters. David Cameron has made his final plea to the British public, flanked by the former Prime Minister, John Major, and Labour's former leader, Harriet Harman. He's urged people to vote for remaining in the EU. And Vote Leave campaigner Boris Johnson, just behind me, he says the referendum is Britain's last chance to take back control.
So just a day to go, Prime Minister, you feeling confident?
Well, it's obviously a very close fight, and I'm putting everything into it. Today we're going around and actually getting people, nurses, doctors, farmers, small businesses, entrepreneurs, coming onto this bus and explaining why they want to stay in, because there's an amazingly wide range of people. We've got Harriet Harman here, we've got the Labour Party, the Green Party, the Liberal Democrats, a Conservative government, the trade unions, small business, large business, and a huge amount of expert opinion. And to hear the Leave campaign today sort of comparing independent experts and economists to sort of Nazi sympathisers, I think they have rather lost it.
So we spoke at the beginning of the campaign. How do you feel it's gone? Has it gone the way you'd expect it to have gone?
Well, it's been a very...
I've got Mr Johnson with us now, as you can see. Hi.
Hi, Kay.
Last stop.
Well, who knows? The battle goes on, and we're fighting for every vote. You asked me just now about some poll, which I hadn't seen. The latest one actually seems to give us a 1-point lead, but we don't mind about polls at this stage. What we're interested in is getting the message across. This is the last chance I think our country has to take back control of obviously a lot of money, which is important, of our immigration system, which is also important, but basically of our democracy. Okay, how can it be right that people in Brussels can have more say over our future than people who are elected to our parliament and to our government in London? And we heard tonight from, as I say, from Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the European
Boris.
Commission.
You were talking about that live on air
Do you
just a short time ago.
Do you think people have heard enough about it?
I think that you've certainly made your point, but I have lots of other things I want to ask you about, including what you think might have been the tipping point if you do win on Friday.
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate about the outcome. I want to talk about why I think we should vote Leave. I think it is absolutely vital that people recognise the enormity of the choice. This is a very grave choice. And yes, I think that we can do better outside the EU. And I think one of the interesting things, you know, you say what was the tipping point in the campaign. I think it's obviously too soon to have any idea about the outcome. But I think the whole hysteria of Project Fear, people suddenly started to think it was nonsensical. This is the 5th greatest economy in the world. It's growing the whole time. It's incredibly dynamic. Listen to what James Dyson had to say.
We've heard so much about James Dyson. Have you seen him in the paper this morning? We've heard so much about, you probably quote another 2 or 3 of them at me as well. What I want to ask you about is what you didn't answer yesterday.
He said it would be an act of economic self-harm if we didn't leave?
It was in the papers this morning. We've seen it. This
Have
grubby
your viewers seen it?
I'm sure they have. They're
Well, I
very
don't
well
know.
educated, our viewers,
I
trust
know,
me.
but I
The
think
grubby business
it's my duty
of
to try to
funding
explain.
£600,000 donated by a former BNP supporter. It was dodged yesterday on the BBC debate. Tell us about it. Should it be given back?
I know.
Mr. Gove said it should be given back.
I'm afraid it's not something. I'm not involved in the
Okay.
fundraising for this campaign. I'm involved in trying
If
to
that's a
explain
fact,
to
should
people.
it be given back?
I'm involved in trying to. I'm very happy to see what's happened there, but let's talk about the issues that matter to people tonight.
That matters to a lot of people. If a former BNP supporter has given £600,000 to vote leave, should it be given back? Mr. Gove says it should be.
I think, well, I'm sure Michael is right in everything he says. But
So you agree with him it should be given back?
Let's concentrate on what matters to the people of this country tonight. Far more important than
You're dodging the question
No, I
again.
mean, no, I'm not. I've just agreed with you, or rather agreed with my friend Michael Gove, that if that's indeed the case, I have no personal knowledge of it, but if that is indeed the case, I'm perfectly happy to go along with it. But far more important than that, Kay, is the decision this country faces. And if we get it wrong and we vote to remain, I just want to get over to people that that is it. And we will be locked in the back of the car, going in the wrong direction, with no prospect of change. And what you heard tonight from Jean-Claude Juncker, just to repeat this point, is that anybody who thinks that we're better off staying in and fighting for change from within is going to be cruelly disappointed. Because our moment of maximum leverage has come and gone.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
And now is the moment of choice. And I think we have
promise
a
that
glorious
we've only got
future,
5 minutes
a
with you,
glorious
so
future
the clock's
outside the
ticking
EU.
down. Let me ask you about Nigel Farage, if I may. Are you happy to be on the same side as him?
Look, I'm talking about my campaign and
That was another politician dodge.
No, I'm talking about.
You'd be very effective in France at the moment, playing for the England team.
I'm talking about our campaign, the Vote Leave campaign. I have no responsibility for anybody else.
How do you feel about Nigel Farage being in part of your team?
If you will forgive me, I want to talk about our team and the Vote Leave campaign, which got the
Is he not
nomination.
part of your team?
No, he's not. Obviously not, because the Vote Leave got the endorsement
On your
from
side,
the.
though, isn't he?
Got the
Semantics,
endorsement from the Electoral Commission, and that's the campaign. And it's a positive campaign, Kay. And it's the right campaign. And it's a campaign that believes in Britain. That's what we're standing up for today. And by the way, I think if people vote for Vote Leave tomorrow, they'll be doing something fantastic for democracy in Europe.
I know.
There are hundreds of, well, you say you know.
I know, but I'm being wound up,
maybe our
and I
viewers
have one
don't
more
know.
question to ask you, if I may. What do you see happening on Friday? Okay, if it is vote Remain on Friday, where does that leave you?
Who cares? This
You
is
care, of course
this is
you
so
care.
much more important than any individual politician. This is the European
It
Union
could be your
is going in
political
the
career over.
well, you know, the big deal. The European Union is going in the wrong direction. We have only one chance in our lifetimes to get this right. It is totally anti-democratic. It is getting worse. We're being sucked into a federal supranational structure that is unsuited to the United
Okay.
Kingdom. There is more and more laws are being passed and more decisions are being taken by people whose names we do not know, who
Okay.
we cannot eject from office.
And that's
this
worth
is our last
sacrificing your
chance
career for.
to take back control, and it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting
sacrificing
for.
your career
Of
for.
course, of course. But
Okay.
anyway, the issue is, do people want to be in charge of our country again? Do we want to have power back with the British people? If so, vote Leave and take back
You
control.
need to go,
tomorrow.
otherwise I'll be in a lot of trouble. It's great
Thanks,
to talk
Kay.
to you.
Nice
Thank
to see
you
you.
very much
Thank you very
indeed.
much.
Good
Nice
luck.
to see you. Thank you.
Thank
See
you. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Jason's with me somewhere. Jason Farrell, I wonder what you made of what Boris was saying.
He's never answered that question about his career following this. He always
He said big
comes
deal,
on
didn't
and
he?
goes.
He, said, he did
yeah.
say big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a number of options here, aren't there? I mean, if he wins, then things become pretty untenable for David Cameron. Now, he did sign a letter saying that he'd support David Cameron remaining as Prime Minister, even if the country votes for out. But of course, remember, it's not Boris Johnson who has to wield the knife.
Okay.
There's 50 MPs, vote of no confidence, and that Boris has set himself up over the last 4 months to be potentially the man that the Conservatives would need to turn to in their hour of need.
Lots more I want to talk to you about, but I just want to bring in Rhyn ap Iorwerth from Plaid Cymru, who is joining us now. Hello to you. You heard what Mr Johnson had to say. Your first reaction?
I think it's very interesting that so much talk is going on about Boris Johnson's future when we're talking about the future of all of us and our relationship with the European Union. I think
Oh, I think we've lost him just for the moment. So Jason is still with us. Jason, what did you make about the £600,000 comment? He says, give it back.
Yeah, well, this is what Michael Gove said. I mean, it took a bit of persuading, didn't it,
did.
for him to come out with that. He really doesn't want. He just doesn't want to get involved with. And you need about 3 questions to get Boris to answer anything that's off subject of why we should leave the EU. But you pressed him on it, and eventually he said, well, I don't have anything to do with it, but if this turns out to be the case, obviously it's not very good news for Vote Leave to have that amount of money from someone connected to the BNP. But we're at the stage now where we're right at the end of the campaign. I don't know how much of the money has been spent, where they're going to find the money from, but presumably if they have that money and the public pressure continues, then the campaign will have to pay it back.
Interesting also, he said, when I pressed him on Nigel Farage, he said he's not on my side.
Well, I mean, they have the same
semantics.
They have the same aim. They have a lot of the same messages, to be fair. And
yeah, you were telling us about that earlier.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the things you heard Boris Johnson say last night about German cars being sold here and why would Germany put up trade barriers against us, about the budget and getting money and spending on the NHS. These are all things that Nigel Farage has been saying for years.
Didn't he coin the phrase Independence Day?
He claims as well in a speech today that that was his phrase, and here we have Boris Johnson on his last stump speech talking about Independence Day. He made it his big gesture that got standing ovation last night in the debates. He's seeing the 24th as Independence Day for Britain, and that's his last big. I mean, I think he's trying to get across 3 things today. He's trying to basically say the economy's okay, don't worry about that. Get forward his core message on immigration, and then just kind of like really rally up this idea of a positive message of Britain outside of the EU. And I guess the 4th thing would be talking again about this unaccountability of people in the EU, people like Jean-Claude Juncker. In his last speech down in Selby, he was saying, who appointed these people, where have they come from, what do we know about them? They're unelected, they're unaccountable. And hasn't he been helped today by Jean-Claude Juncker coming out and saying no further reforms? Okay. If Britain stays in the EU, David Cameron's got everything he's got. He's exploiting that now as well.
Okay. Let's see if we can bring, thank you very much, Jason. Let's see if we can bring in Rhys Biorath again from Plaid Cymru's Shadow Cabinet Secretary. Hello to you. Sorry, we lost you there in the ether. Hopefully you're back with us now. You were telling us what you thought about what Mr Johnson had to say just 12 hours or so ahead of the election starting, or the referendum starting proper.
Sorry, the line dropped off there. I was just commenting, saying that it's kind of ironic that we're talking so much about Boris Johnson and his future when we're talking about the future of all of us within the European Union. I think it's a regret of mine that so much of the focus over the past few weeks and months has been on personalities. I'm looking at this from the point of view of somebody who sees the European Union as something that's offered prosperity for us, that has offered peace for decades, but that is far from perfect. But the European Union, crucially, is not something that happens to us. We in the UK, as it happens, are very, very important members of the EU, and we are the ones that can influence and mould its future. For us in Wales, it's simple. We get more out than we put in. But on the whole, I'd be happy to be a net contributor to the EU because of what it offers us as a society.
Well, we are a net contributor, aren't we, of course, but it doesn't help really, does it, when Jean-Claude Juncker keeps issuing these threats from the other side of the channel?
I think what we need to focus on when we go into the debate tomorrow is what it is that we're talking about. We're talking about throwing away something that is, yes, imperfect, but that has offered us so much in terms of economics and the free trade and the access to 500 million people in a free market, and that's why business overwhelmingly supports staying as part of the EU. But it's so much more than that. I've been very impressed as a member of the National Assembly for Wales in the networks that happen across the European Union on everything, yes, from economics, but also to culture, to health, to our well-being. And this is something that happens across the European Union for the common good, because, as Joe Cox said, you know, there's so much more that unites us across the European Union than that which divides us. And that is so true in the context of the European Union. And that is something that I do not wish to throw away tomorrow.
How do you think the people of Wales will feel, because presumably Wales is going to vote to remain in the European Union, how do you think the people of Wales will feel if they are brought out of the European Union by an English vote?
Well, I'm not going to predict which way the vote's going to go in Wales or which way it's going to go throughout the UK, other than to say that I hope that people will see sense tomorrow that this is something that is far too valuable to throw away. We were very clear from the outset that, there should be a means by which all parts of the UK had to decide to leave if the UK were to leave. But what's important for me going into these last few hours of the campaign is to impress on people what it is that we have got out of the EU, this imperfect EU, but an EU that can be moulded again, that does still allow us democratic control over the important things in our lives, but that does focus on a level that is above Wales and the UK, on issues that are pan-European, on workers' rights, on women's rights, that would be thrown away into the hands of a further and further right-leaning politics if we were to vote to leave.
We've got the impression from Nicola Sturgeon that if the referendum doesn't go the way that that she, representing the Scottish people, would like, there could potentially be another referendum in Scotland. What about an EU referendum? Could there potentially be another EU referendum which would impact on Wales if this one doesn't go the way of the Out campaign, do you think?
I have no doubt that a vote to leave would put a huge strain on the future of the United Kingdom. You might ask, wouldn't I, as a Welsh nationalist who wants independence for Wales, want therefore to see the UK leave the EU in order that we can press the case for becoming an independent member of the EU ourselves? I've got a piece in the New Statesman today, as it happens, explaining what my position is on that, and that is this. The Brexit campaign is a pull the drawbridge up campaign. It's a building walls campaign. My nationalism, our thoughts on how Wales could develop as an independent nation means Wales working together with England, with Scotland, with Northern Ireland, with the Republic of Ireland, with France, being members of a British Union, being members of a European Union. That is what we cannot afford to lose here in Wales. We cannot afford not to be a part of that network. And I would argue, however the maths adds up in the minds of some people, how much we pay in, how much we get out, that it is in the interest of people in England too to look at how networks work across the European Union. We are independent countries. I want Wales to be an independent country, but the UK is independent within the EU, and people need to remember that. It's a society, it's an organisation that's made up of independent states. Now, whilst I want my nation, Wales, to be one of those independent states, people cannot forget that point going into tomorrow. There is no threat from the EU to that independence of the UK. People need to focus on the benefits, what there is to lose.
Okay. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for persevering with us and developing that Skype link for us again. We appreciate that. Thank you. We'll just show you the final shots here of Mr. Johnson with his Leave supporters. He's travelled all the way up here to Darlington. He's travelled something like 600 miles today, starting off at Billingsgate Market at just after 4 o'clock this morning, after a very late night with the debate that we saw on the BBC lasting a couple of hours last night. This is the last throw of the dice as far as Mr. Johnson is concerned. He's sort of tried to distance himself, didn't he, Jeremy, from Nigel Farage. But this part of the country has found itself more and more supporting UKIP. They came a very strong second in quite a few of the constituencies up here in the northeast, and the people that we've been speaking to today, immigration is one of the key issues for them. So if Leave does succeed, in no small part they would have Mr. Farage to thank for that. As far as Mr. Johnson is concerned, he says he has no concern at all for his political career. But if he loses, what will that mean for him on Friday morning? There's been an awful lot of blue on blue action. Has the Prime Minister had enough, or will he welcome him back into the fold? Or if Leave wins, could we be looking at the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Stay tuned for more here on Sky.